we do have some breaking news out of the NFL.
Breaking news from Fox Sports.
And for that, we turn it over to Eddie Garcia.
Well, not a surprise. The Washington Commanders have decided to move on from head coach Ron Rivera. He is out after a 26-49-1 overall record. And interesting, the front office shakeup as well going on with the Commanders. Owner Josh Harris is bringing in former Golden State Warriors GM Bob Myers, as well as former Vikings GM Rick Spielman, who is a familiar name, I'm sure, to football fans.
I was just working with Rick yesterday.
So
he didn't say a word.
Interesting move there, especially the Bob Myers thing is certainly interesting. And also the Carolina Panthers have fired their general manager, Scott Fitterer, as well.
Why? It's going so well there. I can't figure out what happened in Carolina. So the Ron Rivera firing, not a surprise. I think everybody obviously knew that was going to go down the way that it went. But man, so Rick Spielman couldn't do you a solid and fill
well,
in on.
I'll say this much, and I'm not trying to speak for him in any way. I do believe he was being talked to by a number of teams, and I think when you look at, for example, what the players he drafted, some of the teams he built there during his time in Minnesota, his overall experience in the NFL. It speaks for itself. And I think there's some decisions right now and the way the Vikings season kind of went this year that, at least from a front office perspective, you might be, now wishing you had him back. So anyway, the point is it was funny because we were joking with him about another potential situation, and he was tight-lipped about it, wouldn't say anything. But this one was not one of the ones we had discussed. So maybe he would have been more forthcoming if he could have. But my guess is he wouldn't have been. He's a stand-up guy, and obviously he's been a ton of fun to work with this past season.
So Washington's got the number 2 pick.
Yeah. They're getting a quarterback.
Okay, yeah. How attractive of a job is that? Number 2 pick.
I think that's a tough one to answer. It's a tough one to answer for the simple fact that you probably want to be excited about the idea of there being new ownership and them going in a different direction and you being the guy at the forefront of an amazing market. I mean, the market and the fan base has endured a lot, and it's an amazing fan base. Like, you can't go wrong with a number 7, number 8 media market with the type of fans that they have. But with that being said, I just think that there's so much uncertainty, and you're talking about your career. You get picked at the number 2 spot, and you go there, and it may take 4 or 5 years to try to undo, decades of misfunction and just doing things incorrectly. So
they're going to try and make a splash hire, right? Like Jim Harbaugh. They're going to make a run at Harbaugh.
That would be interesting.
They?
I mean, why not? Why not go after Harbaugh? I think that would be the best name to go after. But that does tend to go down the same exact lane that Dan Snyder went down. Like, Dan Snyder did not shy away from hiring high-profile people, not in front office, not as head coaches, not as players.
Well, I would say this, that's not necessarily a bad strategy. It's just, I think what you said and pointed out was the biggest thing is they just don't have the structure, the internal structure to be able to then manage that.
Correct.
I think when you bring in a guy like Bob Myers, what you're looking at doing is constructing what was a dynasty in a period of time in the NBA with the Golden State Warriors and doing it in a way that was unique to their approach. Right. I think the funny thing is not to get on a whole long-winded tangent, but who's the one player that you hear people compare Patrick Mahomes to in other sports?
Steph Curry.
Steph Curry.
Oh, Steph. Yeah. Okay.
And so the interesting thing is okay, so if that's the magic you're trying to recreate, then you go bring in a guy who is maybe a part of that, front office or a part of that brain trust that created that. And then you bring in a football guy like Rick Spielman who's going to help him understand this realm a little better, right? Like, there's a 30,000-foot view, and then there's boots in the ground. and you can have someone who can help you understand, like, who is the best coach to embody what Steve Kerr means to that team with a guy like Steph Curry, with Klay Thompson, and with all the other pieces on that team, Draymond Green, right?
Right. How do you manage those personalities?
So I think that's maybe partially the vision is, hey, we want to be a team that, utilizes, first off, like data analytics. Like, obviously the Warriors caught on to something in a day and age of the NBA where you can have, outside shooters who are smaller, who maybe wouldn't have lasted in the 90s style NBA with the way they play defense and the way the game was played back then. But nowadays you can. Like, you can make it through a whole season healthy, and you can have the most prolific shooter in the history of the game and build around that and build, even more shooters onto that roster, and then change the way everyone else has to play because of how dominant you've been. Like, you could change the league that way. And maybe Washington feels like they're in that position right now in number 2. Now, in order to do that, you have to get a Steph Curry type talent. And so let's just connect the dots here. So if Patrick Mahomes is the Steph Curry of the NFL, who is the player in the draft that's been compared to Patrick Mahomes?
Now I'm up. Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Caleb Williams.
There you go.
And so
he could drop to 2.
Maybe if for example, the Bears don't want to take a quarterback at 1 and don't want to take Caleb Williams at 1, maybe they trade out. Maybe they trade just one spot back. Like, if I'm the Bears, okay, and I have the number 1 overall pick, and I believe that Justin Fields is my quarterback of the future, and I can get back some draft capital and assure myself a what I believe to be a future Hall of Famer in Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 2, why not? You also have another top 10 pick that you can go spend that pick on then, as far as an edge rusher, if you want to continue to build on that side, best player available. But let's just put it that way. Imagine being able to do that if you're Ryan Poles and continue to build. And then for Washington, you get that Caleb Williams. You get that Steph Curry style generational talent player, and now you go. Like that's kind of an interesting strategy to me, but I think you're seeing the framework put in place by Josh Harris with the Myers move, and then bring in a football mind like Rick Spielman, who's done this for decades.
Yeah, I just hope I'm correct on, and I hope you're correct. I hope we're correct on that assessment that the value of bringing in a basketball operations guy is indeed to finally, and listen, like Jason Wright, Tim Hightower, like some of these guys that are in the front office of Washington have really done an amazing job of working to rebuild and just kind of replace what has been really
the
bad.
Team name kind of sucks. Commanders kind of sucks. I'm being honest.
Listen,
the Commandos.
I don't know that anybody is going to adapt and to adjust to something that has been around for so many years, like over 70 some years, close to 80 years, where it's like, okay, we like this new name. I don't look at it that way. I look at it more so from the person, the people aspect of it. If you're bringing in somebody who's going to humanize what's going on at the park, and there's not this air of arrogance and just levels of how you treat people. If you're on this level, you can't even look at the owner.
Talk about little Danny.
If you're on this level, you have to say Mr. Snyder. If you're on this level, I mean, I'm just talking
Danny?
about how it used to be when Lil Danny was walking around, with his armed bodyguards and stuff like that, and it just was.
What's up, Lil Danny?
Yeah, he's somewhere. He's somewhere enjoying them billions. It just to me, if you do go about it in this way, they're doing it the right way. You're starting at the root of it, and once you start at the root of it, then obviously, then now you're able to grow something that's healthy and something that is able to thrive. And so, if that's what Josh Harris and this group is indeed doing with their decision making and who they've made their first hires in the front office being, I think it's a great move in the right direction for this organization.